Hello friends, it's Kristine Vicenti with Queen City Stamp Art. Today is day 4 of the 12 Days of Christmas card series. I have a really fun card for you today. We're going to be using the Snowflake Wishes stamp set from Stampin' Up. This is a stamp set that can be found in the annual catalog in the Christmas section. And we're going to be using some of the snowflake images and a sentiment to create a fun, kind of whimsical card. I'm going to be using a technique called watercolor emboss resist. So we're going to do a little bit of heat embossing with some snowflakes and some gold embossing powder, and then we're going to add some ink to that as a resist technique with water. So why don't I pull in a little piece of watercolor paper. I used my stitched rectangle dies to cut out a stitched rectangle of watercolor paper. And watercolor paper is important for this technique because you really need a paper that will stand up to the amount of water we're actually going to put on it. So you're also going to need to make this card a Versamark ink pad. If you have an embossing buddy, this comes in really handy. We're going to be using some of the Stampin' Up gold embossing powder. And you're probably going to need some water brushes or some sort of paintbrush. I'm using the water painters from Stampin' Up. And I'm going to be using the wide one. There's one with a nice wide bristle. So we're going to be using that. So let's get started by using the embossing buddy on our little panel here that we're going to stamp. This helps to minimize the static that's on here so that the powder doesn't cling to the surface except where the Versamark ink is. Now a Versamark ink pad, for those of you who don't know, is a very sticky watermark ink pad. So certain cardstocks, including the kind that Stampin' Up sells, if a cardstock is dyed all the way through, then this ink pad will stamp on that and create sort of a watermark look, like a tone-on-tone. It doesn't work on printed cardstock. It only works on cardstock that's dyed all the way through. But this ink pad is very sticky, and so it works great when you're trying to do heat embossing because the powder sticks to it really well. So I'm just going to stamp these snowflakes here, like that. And then I'm going to get my little piece of paper out, a little piece of scrap paper. I'm going to put this on. And then I'm going to take my embossing powder. I'm going to sprinkle that over the top. This is kind of the magic of rubber stamping. And then we're going to snap off any extra, like that. And then this will pour back into the jar so we don't waste it. Put the cover on. And now we're going to heat emboss it. So I have my heat embossing tool. This is a little heat gun from Stampin' Up. I'm just going to turn that on and wait for it to heat up. And now I'm going to heat emboss. And I'm just going to wave this over the surface until it turns shiny and hardens up. There it goes. So now it's all shiny and heat embossed, and that looks great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our ink pad, and I'm using Blushing Bride. I'm going to give it a good squeeze to try to transfer some of that ink pad onto the cover, which is what happened. Perfect. And I'm going to be using this wide water brush. I have some water in the barrel here, and I'm just going to give this a little squeeze and get some water on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to saturate this entire panel. I'm just brushing on a nice coat of water to saturate the paper so that the ink will move freely on it. That looks good. So you can kind of see that it's very shiny and wet. It kind of curled up even. So now I'm going to give it another squeeze onto the ink pad and kind of blend it around. So I'm using the cover as kind of a palette. And I'm going to start in the center of the snowflake, and I'm just using an up and down motion to tap the color onto my snowflakes. And I want this to be kind of a mottled look. I don't want this to be smooth, which is why I'm not brushing it on. I don't want to brush it on. I just want to tap it on and create kind of a little pink background for the snowflakes, like this. This is a really fun technique, and you can actually use a couple different colors. You just kind of have to wait in between layers of color because you don't want to, otherwise it'll turn kind of a mucky brown if you don't wait. So you gotta kind of have to let them dry in between. But this is what my little panel looks like, and then it takes a couple hours to just dry on its own. I actually made one. I created one earlier. So this one is nice and dry. So we're just going to set this one aside, and this one will dry too. And then I can make a card out of that one a little bit later. And now we'll put our little card together. So this is what the finished one looks like. So I just added a little bit of color. It's a little bit mottled. It looks kind of cool, like a little pink background. So I'm going to take a Poppy Parade base card. And I forgot to cut a panel for the inside, but I am going to line this with a panel on the inside. I'm going to add this to the front of the card. So I'm just going to tape it down with regular tape runner. And I'm just going to center this panel right on the front of the card. Like that. And then I have my Poppy Parade ink pad and the sentiment that I want to use. And I have a little strip of Blushing Bride cardstock, and I'm just going to stamp the sentiment on that. The fact that it's clear makes it very easy. I want to make little fishtail ends, so I'm going to put that, I'm going to use my little tailored tag punch and just snip a little triangle out of the end of each part of this to create like a little banner. I could do that with my scissors, but it was just as much fun to do it that way. And then I have some of this beautiful gold, metallic gold fine art ribbon. So this is some gold ribbon I have in my stash. And I'm just going to, I think this is in the annual catalog, and I'm just going to cut a small piece of it to layer onto my card. Since that's gold, I want there to be a little gold here. So I'll put a little bit of adhesive on the back of this. If this ribbon is not available, I know there is another metallic gold ribbon available. There we go. And then I'm going to use some dimensional adhesive to pop up the sentiment strip. Just like that. It's a little bit crooked. There we go. And then to finish this off, I thought I would put on some of these beautiful champagne rhinestones. These are so pretty, and they look really good with the pink because they're peachy, but they take on that pink tone. So we're going to add some of these on here for a little extra sparkle. I think I'll add a big one too on the bottom here, like that. Yeah, that looks good. And that's the card for today. So I hope you're enjoying the little series. We're on this is card number 4. So we have 8 more cards to go, but this is just a kind of a fun little technique. And you could do this in any color scheme you like. You could do it in blues and greens, or you could do it, you know, in any kind of background color. You could even mix up some different colors and have like a little rainbow effect back there. But I just thought it would be fun to share kind of a simple card, but one that uses some heat embossing. So I hope you enjoyed the card for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll be back tomorrow.